Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the Nivkh language and about expression of caritive semantics. But I have to say that comparing to Turkic languages and many other languages, Nivkh is not that interested in this respect. That is why I decided to begin from afar, just to talk a little bit about negation, possessive negation in general, and then to move to one small side about how caritive semantics is actually expressed in this language. Many of you, of course, know where the Nivkh language is spoken, but for those of you who have forgotten, I remind that the language is spoken in the far east of Russia, on the Sakhalin Island, and on the mainland in the lower reaches of the Amur River. So basically, currently, it's the Sakhalin region and the Khabarovsk area, where the language is spoken, or should we better say was spoken, because we really do have like about maybe, my last estimation is about no more than 30 competent speakers, and this is probably an overestimation. So my data, which I'm going to talk about and to refer to, comes from my fieldwork, which I did at the times when the language was still spoken in this area, and also currently. And also, I'm not going to show you very sophisticated examples from folklore texts, but you have to believe me that the story there is more or less the same as in the examples, simple examples, which I'm going to show to you. So if we think about Nivkh varieties, so you can see the map, how I estimate the number of these varieties every time grows when I show this map. And this is why we're not even talking nowadays about dialects, about the continuum of dialects, which can be grouped into two big groups. So 1, 2, 3, 4, these are Amur varieties, 5, 6, 7, these are Sakhalin varieties. Sakhalin, in a way, that's, okay, Sakhalin varieties are spoken in Sakhalin, but Amur varieties, as you can see, if you look at the map, and the varieties number 3 and 4 also, okay, 3 and 4. So you can see that they're spoken actually on Sakhalin Island. This is not a surprise, because people were moving from the mainland to the island. So this is how it happened. And basically, if we want to think about the language itself, about how its diversification took place, we nowadays can probably speak about 2 different languages, and those varieties from 1 to 4, they form a language which is called Nivkh, and this is how it is called in the language, this is how it is called in these varieties. And 5, 6, 7, and the variety, South Sakhalin variety, is already extinct, so actually they call their language Nivkh, and themselves they call Nivkh. And in my presentation further, I will just use the terms Amur and Sakhalin. And you have to remember that this is more or less where these varieties are spoken. So nowadays, the researchers speak about even a small family like Amuric languages, to which these 2 languages belong. Okay, so if we think about expressing negation, it's interesting that here we also have kind of 2 groups of varieties, and with red dots I marked the villages where the Nivkh people nowadays live, like compactly. And in that sense, on Sakhalin, there is one way to express negation, on Amur another way, this red circle, but people who are living on northern Sakhalin actually use both ways of expressing negation. And this is very interesting. So if we come back to this map, there was number 3 variety, West Sakhalin. They really employ both Amur and Sakhalin ways of expressing negation, including also caritive semantics. Okay, so I'll start with existential clauses that far away, and at this point, existence is expressed in Sakhalin and Amur varieties more or less in the same way. So we have a construction in which we have an existing noun phrase and existential verb. This can be the clause can be also extended by the locative noun phrase, so which serves as a topic, then subject, and existential possessive verb. So here is an example from the Sakhalin variety, Molkmich alsh yivt. So in the birch bark basket, berries exist. This is how you talk about existentiality. And what we're interested in, this is the verb yivd, existential verb, which you will see also have a possessive meaning. So in the Amur dialect, Amur varieties, so everything is the same at this point, besides there are some phonological differences in the verb and some words, but the whole construction looks exactly the same. Again, the verb yivd is here in the end of the sentence, yivd in the Amur dialect. So here you see, these are very important things. I would like to memorize this verb for a couple of minutes, okay? So if we move on and look about negative existentials, again, here we have the same construction in both varieties. So we have existee, noun phrase, and negative verb, which again, the clause can be extended by the locative noun phrase. And here we have an example from this Sakhalin variety, long time ago, nobody was there. There was nobody. So here we have the negative verb kabr and also with the completive intentional suffix. What happens in the Amur variety? So you can see the sentence opening the eyes when he looked. Polycat, there was no. His polycat, there was no. And here we have also a negative verb. So, okay, you can see two negative verbs. Kavrhart in the Sakhalin variety and Kavrits in the Amur variety. So probably both verbs come back to some protonic form. So this is the same verb, apparently with some changes, phonological changes in the Amur variety. So, but most of these phonological changes can be explained by the general phonological processes which took place in the Nivkh. So I'm not going to get into it, but it looks like we're talking about the same negative verb. So this is negative existential clause. Okay, for some reasons it doesn't want to move. Now we're coming to possession. And here here is the situation when these varieties, Sakhalin and Amur, diversify. So now the constructions look different. So in the Sakhalin variety, we have so-called have possession construction. So like in English, I have something. So we have a possessor, we have a possessee, and we have a possessive verb, which is a transitive verb in this case. So the sentence looks like this: Hevgon mam ivd. So Hevgon is a possessor, mam is possessee, wife and ivd, this is verb. And this is actually is the same verb yivd, which we saw in the existential construction, remember? But here it behaves like a transitive verb. And its behavior we can see from the fact that their first element y behaves like a third person object marker here and is left away when the object, like in this case wife, is attached to the verb. So it's definitely a transitive verb. At least it shows its transitive behavior. This is what happens on Sakhalin. What happens on Amur? Here we have another kind of construction, which we can call topic possession, and which is formed in the way that we have a possessor, which is unmarked, a possessee, which is unmarked, and possessive verb, which is the same verb as existential verb. And this is the construction in which the verb yivt, the same verb as in Sakhalin, behaves like intransitive verb. So what we have here, the sentence which can be translated into English as for Hevgun, wife there is. Okay, Hevgun mom yivt. And here the verb yivt doesn't, behaves as if it wouldn't have any third person object marker with it. It just stays as it is in the same way as is existential constructions. You can see here these two verbs I'm talking about. So in one dialect it behaves like a transitive verb and another like an intransitive verb. This is, by the way, a very big problem when speakers of different varieties tries to communicate with each other. So they, for them, this is the wrong way to talk, of course, when they think about another variety. So one of biggest problems in this case. Okay, now we are moving on to negative possession. And again, we will see that in different varieties of Nivkh, negative possession is expressed differently, though similarly but differently. So what we have here, the first possible construction in the Sakhalin variety is that, again, very similar to possessive construction. So we have Hevgun in this case, possessee, possessor, then we have mom, possessee, and then there is a negative verb which is attached, to which the object is attached, the verb havrt, which actually is the same verb as the verb havrt, which was used in existential negation, but which in this case again behaves like a transitive verb. And we can see that this is a transitive verb because if you look at the first initial of the verb, you see they're different. And there is a synchronic rule in the Nivkh language. So if the initial consonant begins with the fricative and then alternates when it takes the object, so we are obviously dealing with a transitive verb. If it begins with a plosive and the plosive doesn't alternate, we're dealing with the intransitive verb. So here you can see this verb gavt comes back to the existential negation verb gavt. It's just transitive. So this is the first type of constructions. Another way to form a negative construction, you take the verb, existential verb yivt, remember? Like I asked you to memorize it, and then to it you attach the negative verb havrt. And you have the verb ivgavt, doesn't have. This is very transparent, so have, not, and then you attach different kind of modal, mood markers, and so on. Hevgun mom ivgavt. Hevgun doesn't have wife. Okay, so this is our verb. Also, there is a third way to express negative possession, to use a lexical negative possessive verb. And I have to say that Nivkh in general have many lexical negative verbs with different modal markers. I cannot, I'm not able, and so on. Here in the Sakhalin variety, we have the verb avlit, which means not have. Hevgun doesn't have a wife. Hevgun mom avlit. So you don't need any other ways to express negation. This is what happens in the Sakhalin variety. Then we'll go to the Amur variety. Here again, you remember in possessive construction, it was a topic possession construction, so the verb is intransitive. So again, in the same way, Amur speakers form negative possessive constructions. Hevgun mom havt. As for Hevgun, wife, there is no.
So this is again the same negative verb, which is used in negative existentials, and it's intransitive here. So we can compare these two verbs. As I said, historically, they probably come back to the same verb, but synchronically, they behave differently. So in the Sakhalin variety, in this type of construction, it is transitive. In the Amur variety, it's intransitive. So there is no such construction as in the Sakhalin variety with the possessive verb, negative verb. So in this variety, there is no way to present in this way, but there is lexical negative possessive verb, which is also transitive in the same way as in Sakhalin variety. So, this is the verb ligit. This is a different verb from the Sakhalin variety, but it behaves in the same way as the verb avlid in the Sakhalin variety. What does this verb do? It likes emphatic, let's say, clitics to be attached to the object. So basically, in each example where you have the verb ligi, you have an emphatic clitic on the object. So, but these are two lexical possessive verbs which are different. So this is how differently the speakers of different varieties speak. Okay, and finally, we with caritives, so the topic of this conference. What happens here in different varieties? So basically, the structure of the clause with which we can construct caritive expression is the same in both varieties. So what you do, you form a narrative clause with a narrative verb. In the Sakhalin variety, this is a transitive verb, right? So what you say here, food being without, how will you go? Okay, so being without food, how can we go? Without food, how can we go? This is the only way you can express caritive meaning in the Nivkh language. And as you can imagine, there are not that many examples which demonstrate the use of such kind of constructions, because people really rarely speak like that. If they want to express this meaning, they can find other ways, like to express themselves. But as I show you, it is possible, nevertheless, to form such kind of construction. What happens in the Amur variety? In the Amur variety, the construction looks the same, but it's not the existential negative verb, which is attached, with which the construction is formed. But this is a lexical verb, in this case, ligi, negative lexical verb, negative possessive verb. And here, the same example, but with the verb ligit. So without food, how will we go? This converb, in this case, which ends in t, this is a very general narrative converb. You can form like very long chains of these converbs, and they just show you that, okay, we are talking about these things. There is no like a very special, for instance, temporal meaning. This is just a chain of forms. However, what happened in the Amur variety, there was a further development. So this converbal form, ligit, actually developed into a postposition or relational noun. We can call it in different ways. And you can see in this example, which nicely demonstrates us how you can express both absence and presence of something. So nin, we, lep, romsk, bread with, seta deliri, sugar without, chai, tea, drink. Okay, so here you can see that lige, this element, doesn't behave like a converb. It behaves like in the same way as the postposition romsk in the first part of the sentence. So this is actually the current speakers of the Amur variety whom I asked about this construction, they do not recognize it. So they use the converb. But this example is attested, for instance, in Panfilov's text. So we can believe that in some sub-varieties that was a further development. But as I say, currently the speakers do not use this form. As for the Sakhalin varieties, there is no such development, so nothing has developed in this way. But it's probably not the right construction to develop a postposition, because we're really dealing with a negative existential verb here. So that is one of the answers why it hasn't developed further. Okay, some conclusions. What can we say? As you can see, there is a considerable interdialectal variation, expression possession and also possessive negation. And really, if you ask me to name one morphosyntactic feature which will separate Sakhalin varieties from the Amur varieties, I would probably pick up negation. So this is also seen when the speakers discuss these constructions. They're different. They're also different in clausal negation in general, not only in possessive negation. So what we have possessive construction in Sakhalin varieties, topic possessive construction in Amur varieties. We have synchronically different negative verbs, though of course they come back to the same verb. We have also different lexical negative possessive verbs. And also we have kind of interdialectal influence in the West Sakhalin variety, where all these devices are they are not mixed, but they're used parallelly currently. So also we can say that caritive meaning is expressed in all varieties by structurally identical dependent narrative clauses. However, they comprise different negative verbs. Negative verb existential, we can say negative verb in Sakhalin variety, and lexical possessive negative verb in the Amur variety. And as I mentioned, converbal form of the negative possessive form has developed into the relation noun or postposition only in the Amur variety, but it has developed and eventually passed away. So it was a very short development. Okay, thank you very much. That was it from my part.
Thank you. Please ask questions in the chat if you have any. Okay, Sonia.
Thank you very much for your talk. It's really very interesting. So my question is not about caritive uses, but about the negative verb, something like that. I guess you know that in some of Nanaic languages, in Ulch and in some Nanai dialects, there is a negative existential kawe or kauke. What do you think about the origin of this negative verb in Nivkh? Is it originally Nivkh, or could it be borrowed from Nanaic varieties?
This is of course a good question, but can it be borrowing in another direction? We can think also about that, right? So
yeah. Yes, of course. That's why I'm asking.
And this is, I would say that it probably can be original in Nivkh because there is no other ways to use to speak. And we can see that there were different developments quite essential. So in the development of these verbs. So I would say this is from Nivkh to other.
Thank you.
It's interesting that exactly the same verb is attested in the Klamath language, but this is very far away. Yeah. And I think we should investigate it further.
Thank you.
Maxim.
Yeah, it's like the borrowings between Chuvash and Mari. You never know, which direction it is. I would like actually to ask about also about the possessive predications, and I have one small question about Eve and Gavr. As far as I understand, Gavr is also a verbal suffix, right? But Eve is not.
Like you mean here?
Yeah.
No, it's, yes, if we think of this construction, we are talking about this possessive verb, negative verb, Eve covered, right here. Yeah. So it nowadays behaves like a suffix, but if we think about the origin of this construction, this is actually compounding of verb roots. So possessive verb, the root of the possessive verb, and the synthesizes with the root of the negative verb, which is, as you know, one of the most even nowadays productive ways to form like kind of different verbal forms. So that is why it's logical kind of to attach a negative verb to the possessive verb. Possessive verb itself behaves like a normal verb. And my guess is it used to have this Eve form without this Y element in the beginning. And if we think also about possessive constructions in the Amur variety, I think again we have to have a look at Tungusic languages and how possession expressed there, and was the influence of Tungusic languages for forming such kind of constructions. Sonia can probably answer better to this question. So, because they really, the behavior is different. And this ye probably was attached as a third person object marker, like it happens with other verbs in Nivkh. And the original form of the verb was probably ived, but then it was reanalyzed in the Amur variety as just a verb, intransitive one. Or, of course, it could be the other way around, that it was original verb, not transitive one, which then was reanalyzed in Sakhalin varieties as a transitive, because it has this ye, which is normally a third person object mark on the verb.
Mm-hmm. And so I wonder, there aren't any forms where Eve would behave as Gavr in connecting to verbal stems, are there?
Like it would be attached to other, to verbs. No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No. It's just a full lexical verb, possessive ones. No, it's not possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I think as we started a little bit later, we still have at least 1 minute if someone has another question. Actually, I wanted to ask, if I may, about the postpositional use. Do you think there are internal reasons for the postposition to develop? Like, is there a tendency in the language to develop postpositions from verbal forms?
Yes, thank you. This is a very good question. Yes, there is a tendency, and this is exactly how it happens with other postpositions. They can develop from verbs or can they develop from nominals, and if from verbs, it seems that their origin is exactly in the same construction with the narrative converb. So they just lose their converbal suffix and used as postpositions. So this is a very typical way.
I mean, is it more typical for the Amur varieties, as it didn't happen in the Sakhalin ones?
No, I would say in both varieties it's more or less the same, but as I said, my guess here is that since we're dealing with different types of verbs, so this has developed in the Sakhalin variety, so it's a pure negative verb without any, like say, additional lexical meaning, which is actively used in other types of constructions. So in actually all types of negative constructions. And in the Amur variety, there are other ways, which I wasn't talking about, to express negation also. So Lihi is a good candidate to be developed into the postposition. Actually, we could expect probably this verb avli could have developed from converb, but I haven't seen, at least until now, any examples of such use of the verb avli. So in this Sakhalin variety, they prefer to use this general negative verb. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Thank you a lot for the interesting talk.
Thank you.